Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Automating the Trades. We are here with Jacob, our president at the Graphite Lab. My name is Natalia. In this webinar, we're going to talk through some of our live customer problems. We have a handful of problems ready to go. These are problems that typical businesses in the trades may encounter. We're going to be walking through some different automations utilizing Zapier, as well as our advanced set of tools to solve these problems. Jacob, a few problems that some of our customers or other general trades businesses have submitted, and then you can walk us through how you would solve those live. Does that sound good?
Thank you so much, Natalia. I'm very excited to hop into these.
So we've got time for one last problem to solve here. The person said, I need to know if an estimate given to a customer had a margin that was less than 64%.
Awesome. So this one is actually a really common workflow that gets asked for. Basically, what we're trying to do here inside of ServiceTitan, one of the things, the alerts are obviously one thing that is difficult to manage. And this question can be tackled in a lot of different ways. Really, some of the major key considerations that we want to think about here is, which we don't really have natively in the question, but we can assume. So I need to know if an estimate is given to a customer, whether or not it had a margin that was less than 64%. What we want to understand is, when do we want to know? Because what is our triggering event? We want to fundamentally understand in our workflow, at what point do we want to know this? Is it like when we're doing job review later? Is it based on technician performance? Is it something in the moment? One of the things that we can assume is, since it is something that the team that they're asking for, we can assume they really want to know in the moment because they want to catch it as quick as possible. The other thing that we want to know is, do we need to calculate labor burden? A lot of shops leverage labor burden in different ways. With estimates, there's some configurations that you can actually have that on there. One of the major problems with the estimates workflow out of ServiceTitan is that they actually don't give us access to that information programmatically. So it's something that we'd have to make up a little bit if we were going to do that. But there's a lot of different ways to manage this. And so this is a complex Zap. And what we're going to assume here is that we want it to be based off the estimate itself. So what we're going to do is query estimates, click continue. You can see we have all sorts of values coming through here. What we're going to want to do is manage our created after and created before dates to trigger at the right moment. One of the major considerations here is, when an estimate's created, the technician typically has not added anything to it. If you trigger the moment they create the estimate, it's going to cause major problems because odds are it's not built yet. The other thing to take into account is, like, how long does it typically take a technician to build an estimate? Because we're not necessarily doing it when the job's done. We're doing it when the technician creates it. It could be created not on a job. It could be created in the office. And so one of the things that you really going to want to understand is, when do we want to trigger? If you have a situation where a technician is just constantly making an estimate and not building it for a week because they get distracted, this might trigger immediately, or it might do a false positive or something like that. And so we really want to trigger, we want to find the sweet spot of, like, when is the best time to trigger so that we can get quick attention to it, but too soon. And what I'm going to say is, we're going to give 1 hour to anybody who's created an estimate to fill it in. So I'm going to do now minus 2 hours, because we're going to want to create like an hour window that we're peering things in. And the created before date, instead of now, we're going to do an hour ago. Basically, as an hour ago creeps into the future, the estimate is an hour old when it kind of enters into that window. So we'll do now minus 1H. So now anything in the hour window an hour ago, as it enters into that, will trigger this workflow. So we'll see that go. Okay. And then here, we'll go ahead and test that trigger. All right, awesome. So it didn't pull anything in. The reason is because I haven't created an estimate an hour ago. So one trick that I always use to do that is, I will always get the created after, and just Command X on my computer, click test, and this will bring in any estimate because we just need something to work with. So we'll go ahead and click test. This is one of those situations where we're always going to want to make sure that we go back and fix this. So we're going to go ahead and pull this in, just to get a test record. Does take a second because, again, we're hydrating a bunch of information whenever we find a successful record. Okay, perfect. So we found one. The very first thing, before I even look at one, I'm going to replace this created after. I do not want to forget that it's going to be key to this working. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. There we go. We have any estimate in there. The first thing I'm going to do is trigger this off of all estimates. If I want to filter this by a certain condition, I can here. We're not going to have immediate access to the margins. We're just going to hop right in. Now, what we're going to do here, one of the things that you'll notice inside of our estimate items here, if we go to items, we don't actually on our estimate have anything about gross margin. So you'll see here, nothing about gross margin. We have a subtotal, but we don't have a gross margin. So we're going to have to calculate that. So we're going to leverage a code step. Code steps can be scary for people because they require coding. This is where a lot of companies leverage our custom development studio to build these workflows and take into account all of these heavy considerations. But I'm going to show you how this one will work. The really nice thing with Zapier is they have this generate with AI feature, which we'll use in this conversation just to get you guys familiar with it. If you don't know anything about coding, you're not going to be able to check whether or not it works, but you can run a bunch of tests to see if it's working the way you think. So what I'm going to do is grab the costs. We want the total cost. We don't want the unit cost. And we're going to do line item. And then we're going to do the total price. So we're just going to search for total. And we'll do the estimate total here. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do here is say line item costs is a comma separated string. A string is just text. So we'll do line item costs is a comma separated list of all of the material costs on an estimate. Total is the total price we are quoting to the customer. We would like you to add up all of the costs and calculate the gross margin percentage and return that as the out. We're going to go ahead and generate code. Be as descriptive as you can for these. You can see it's calculating some stuff. You're probably not going to fully understand what it means, but we'll just go ahead and use that code. JavaScript has a lot of stuff that can and can't mess up. We'll notice that the cost is 0. So the gross margin percentage is 100. Exactly what we would expect. Go from there. And then we are going to add in a filter step that gets that gross margin percentage if it is less than 64%. We're going to run whatever next steps we want to run, whether that's a task to the technician, a notification to their manager, something to the dispatcher, something to the sales team, whatever that looks like, that can be these next steps. Now, this JavaScript step is really cool because it allows us to do some really advanced stuff. You'll notice one of the things that we had flagged as a potential consideration is whether or not we care about labor burden. So one of the things that you can do with all of this is you can factor in a level of labor burden. One of the things some people do is they will take the total cost of the line items and they will up it by a certain percentage for the labor. They'll maybe double it or whatever. They assume like the same cost of labor per the materials. Or what they'll do is they'll make estimated labor a consistent percentage of the total price. Or they will determine that they'll actually get the technician's labor burden out of ServiceTitan and will actually do a calculation based on the SKUs added. So we can get as complex or as simple as we want. But this is the algorithm that allows us to do those complex calculations, even though ServiceTitan isn't necessarily providing that information out the gate. This is a very common way we would go about solving this problem.
That is perfect. Jacob, thank you so much for not only solving that last problem, but for going through all of these problems. It was really awesome to see the in-depths of Zapier and your opinions on different features and our custom Zapier app. So thank you so much for the time.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
To everyone watching, if you are interested in getting any of these problems solved for you and your business, please feel free to reach out. Our contact form is always in the description as well as in our bio. We'd be more than happy to hop on a call and chat through how we can help you out with problems like this and other ones too.